computer and I'm going to exit my full screen. And I want to say welcome to our third MJ Virtual Book Club. I mean, it has been an amazing ride. We started in November with traditionally published authors. We went through
Mhm.
December, and now in January, one of my favorite authors has agreed. I'm a little bit of a stalker. If I see a book that I like, I'm gonna harass people on Instagram. I get the most effect on Instagram more than anything. And I think the last author, she wanted to have a conversation. She's like, "Who is this person?" So we actually had a conversation
Yeah.
before
I
we had a
love it.
meeting before the virtual book club. So it was amazing. And so
Well,
and I'm just so grateful that you've agreed to be a part of this.
well,
Um,
thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Let me just go ahead and tell you how I fell in love with all your books, especially Curtis Black. I mean,
Mhm.
who did not fall in love with Curtis Black, even though he was a man of the cloth?
Yes.
It was
He
just
had
that.
some issues. Yeah.
My sister, I fell in love with the only romance books that I can get my hands on was Danielle Steele. I know that's kind of bizarre. And I think I was in sixth grade, and my sister introduced to her.
Uh-huh.
And I was in search of, I'm like, I know there's some African American authors out there. And so my sister, tell us, Sabrina, how did you come across this? How did you come across her?
Well, my first African American novel was written by J. California Cooper.
Yes. Excellent writer.
And
Oh my
yes, I did.
gosh.
Yes, I read her. That was my first author. Living in a small town with mostly Caucasians, we didn't have a plethora of African American authors published with that in our libraries. They weren't
Mhm.
there. So when I went to Birmingham, Alabama for college, they in the libraries they had it labeled African American books. They had it on the spine of the book, African American or authors. That wasn't in our communities here. So
Mhm.
found out that we actually had that many African American writers. I was like, whoa, love it. So I've always been a reader, an avid book reader. I would read all summer book programs. I read the most books. So
Mhm.
of course, when you're searching for authors, you're looking for them, and this is before Google. So you just had to just go and look for the spines, and I came across your books, and wow, I've just
Oh
been,
my gosh.
yes. So,
That's wonderful to hear that.
and think I have read every last one of your books. Because when I found out the first book, and I don't know the first book I read, but it wasn't Cast the First Stone. I know that was one of your very first books.
Yes.
Go
And that was
back.
the first one. Yeah, Casting the First Stone, the first book in the series was actually my third book. So my very first book was Behind Closed Doors.
Yeah.
And my second book was Here and Now.
Yes. And so I
Mhm.
had to go back. So when I read the first book, I don't know which one it was. When I read the first book, I said, I got to go back. I know she has more. So I
Mhm.
went way back to the very first book and just started from the beginning. And I've read every last one of them.
Oh my, I appreciate that. That's a wonderful, wonderful story. And it's just always so encouraging for me to hear that someone has been reading my books, first of all, for a very long time, but to say that you have read every single one of them, you have no idea how much that means. And so it just makes you feel like, okay, this was all so much very worth it, writing every single one of those books. So yeah.
Yes. So I am so excited. I get to meet you. I met another one of my authors was Vanessa Davis Griggs,
Yes. Yeah.
actually in Birmingham. And when I read of all of her books too.
Yeah,
Oh,
Vanessa is just she's just a
yeah.
wonderful writer
Oh,
and just person. She's a wonderful woman. So yeah, I love her.
so every time I'm in Birmingham, if there's an opportunity, we usually see each other.
Yes, so wonderful. Actually,
Yeah.
ironically, I'm going to be in Birmingham. That's my first, well, I may have another one in March, but right now, confirmed, that's my first speaking engagement in person out of town for this year. So I'm really looking forward to getting down there again.
Wow.
Just
Wow.
well,
Okay.
tell us a little bit. Tell us a bit about yourself. Tell me where it all started, where you're
Yeah.
from, and tell us
Yeah.
everything.
So I live in the Rockford, Illinois area, which is actually 90 miles northwest of Chicago. So it's not a suburb, and we're only maybe about 15 or 20 minutes from the Wisconsin border. So that gives you an idea of how far northwest we are. And then if you go the other direction, if you go west, you're going to head into Iowa. And but I was born and raised here, and went to elementary school, junior high, high school. Throughout all those years, I would hear teachers saying to me, you have a gift for writing, or you write stories well, you should really think about following this and continuing this as you get older. And I just didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. And so it was not until my last year in high school that I thought, I better start thinking more about what I'm going to major in college. And so, at that point, you're kind of trying to just figure out yourself, asking myself these questions and just wondering, what am I going to do moving forward? But because I had heard so many of my teachers all those years talk about writing and storytelling and creative writing, and then when I was in junior high school, I wrote for the school newspaper, and I was an anchor for our little TV broadcast morning news show that we did every single morning. I did that for an entire semester. So I knew I loved writing. I loved journalism. I loved talking, and so I thought, okay, let me take a look. But what I did in high school, in that last year of high school, was I started researching and discovered the salaries of writers. And that's when I thought, well, no, I'm definitely not going to be a writer. That's not going to happen. There's no way, because the income was very low in comparison to folks who were going on to law school or who were getting their master's degrees in business, and they were working in the fields of finance and marketing. And so I thought, nope. I love writing. I enjoy it. It doesn't even feel like work to me when I'm writing. That's what I was thinking. But I thought, you know what? But I've got to have a decent career, and I want to make as much money as I possibly can. And so that's how I ended up majoring in business, first with a 2-year degree, ultimately with my bachelor's degree. I worked in corporate America. I worked for state government here in Illinois. I worked for city government here in our city, but still all pretty much in a business capacity. And as those years continued on, in my 20s and heading in, toward 30 years old, what I realized was that something was missing. I felt like there was this void, so to speak, and was applying for promotions at various companies, wasn't getting those promotions in some cases, and one in particular, when employees even wondered why I didn't get the job, because I was the most qualified of the candidates. And so that became very frustrating, and I was really down about that for a while, because I just started thinking, you go to school, you get an education, you do everything that corporate America says that you need to do to be successful, and then you're not successful. And so that's a little devastating, when you experience that. So I just started thinking, okay, it's time for me to really go into prayer, because there's got to be something better. And my prayer was just, Lord, show me what it is I'm supposed to do. And I started thinking back to elementary school and junior high and high school, and how, wow, but this is what my teachers always said that I was good at, and this is what always felt natural to me. And I loved writing at that time, even when I wasn't being paid for it. And so that's really how this whole idea of, I'm going to sit down and write a book, and I'm going to write a book that falls into the genre of books that I like to read. And so in 1995, I sat down and started writing behind closed doors. I was a financial analyst for city government. So I would work from 8 to 5, come home, get a little something to eat, get changed, and then I would write from like 6 to 10 or 11 o'clock every single night. And I did that for 7 months until that first book was complete.
That is incredible. So, what is next for you?
Wow. So, as
That's a good
you
question.
know, Sister Friends Forever is my 29th book. So I've written 28 novels and I've written one nonfiction book, which I actually released just two months before the pandemic. And today I was posting about it because ironically, it was 3 years ago today, January 30th, 2020. And so I've had some readers contacting me publicly and some by inbox messaging saying, when did you write a nonfiction book? And, when did the woman God created you to be come out? And I'm getting ready to order it. And I realize now that because it was released 2 months before the pandemic and the shutdown happened, well, I couldn't do my normal promotions. And all of my speaking engagements and book signing events that were lined up to promote that event, of course, were either canceled or postponed. In some cases, I was able to do virtual events here and there, but that's pretty much what the gist of that has been, throughout these last 3 years. And then, of course, again, moving forward to last year, Sister Friends Forever was released. And so now I feel like I need to count around the number out to 30 books. So just trying to decide, though, will it be another novel? Will it be fiction, or will it be another nonfiction book that I've sort of had on my heart as well?
That's incredible. So I know I heard in what you were saying, you prayed and you asked the Father exactly which direction you wanted to go in, and you said you found a genre that fit you. And I know it's Christian fiction, right?
Well, in the beginning, it really wasn't. And I have never really categorized my work as Christian fiction. But of course, the media, I do newspaper interviews, magazine interviews, and then readers, my readers in general started saying, thank you for writing Christian fiction. So that's when I kind of realized, I guess, that's what it is. But in the very beginning, for example, when I was just saying to you, Sabrina, the first book, Behind Closed Doors, the second one, Here and Now, it did not center on the church. And there were a few select words in there, is what I like to say. No, you weren't going to see that every single chapter, but it might have been one here and there. If a character was angry, or they were betrayed, or they were really in a heated debate or argument with someone, I was showing just how real they were. Of course, after writing a few books, because that's not who I am, and that's not what I prefer to read, even if it is just a few words here and there. God really convicted me with that. And so I just arrived at a point where I said, from here on out, I will tell my stories, and I don't need to have graphic scenes in terms of intimacy, and I don't need to use profanity. So that did change. But I think because I have been in church my entire life, I was raised to love and honor and respect God. First of all, that's why that part of it bothered me, that I was doing something that I didn't even feel comfortable with. But I think because of my faith and my love for God, that just has always rung through with all of my stories. And so I always say, I think that as much as, I will be categorized as a Christian fiction writer, I think it's more that I'm just a writer who just so happens to be a Christian woman. And I think that's the reason. So no matter what I write, you're going to be able to probably tell what my faith is, and just how I feel about it. But I think that as time, has just continued on, it is because of what I kept writing and because of my faith, that's how the nonfiction book came about. That was not a book that I ever wanted to write. But it was a book that God laid on my heart. And I share in the book how I would go to bed with it and I would wake up with it. And I'd go to bed and I'd wake up and it just wouldn't go away. And I tell everyone, that's the time in my life when I realized that God gets what he wants, whether you want that or not, he gets what he wants. And the blessing in it is that as much as I was afraid to write it, didn't think I was capable of writing it, it ended up being my most enjoyable writing experience ever.
That is amazing. Amazing.
Mhm.
And I want to go to your 29th book. You said
Yes.
this is Sister Friends Forever. I
Mm-hmm.
know in today's society, the age we are right now, friends are very difficult to find or to keep. You have those childhood friends, they're my bestest friend, and you have like 20, 25. And by the
Mm-hmm.
time you're older, almost half century,
Mm-hmm.
things change. But these ladies remain the same, true. Tell us a little bit about that. What
Yeah.
inspired you to do this book
So,
particularly?
and kind of going back to when I wrote the nonfiction book, and at that point, when I wrote that, I was a little bit burned out on writing fiction. And so it was just, I think I was writing not just one book every year, but I had gotten to the point for a number of years, I was writing 2 books and releasing them every year. So I was on a pretty busy schedule, and I was doing book tours and other speaking engagements outside of that window when the book tours were taking place. And so as I was writing The Woman God Created You to Be, one of the chapters that I focused on was about friendship, and was about being loyal to other women, and, not just, seeking out great friends and best friends, but learn how to be a best friend and a loyal friend. And so that really stuck with me. And then, of course, when the pandemic happened, to me, sisterhood really became much more important to me, I think, than it ever had been before, because during the pandemic, we learned that family and friends is all we had. I mean, there was nothing else we really could do or depend on. And so Sister Friends Forever was a book that I had always wanted to write, because I had always wanted to write a story that focused on the 4 relationship statuses. And so it just so happens that I thought, okay, you know what, but these won't be sisters. I want these to be good girlfriends, that they would meet as small children, that they would remain friends as they grew up. They would all go to 4 separate colleges. They would still be best friends. They would come home and spend time together every single summer. And then they would do something that is usually unheard of. They will all come back to their hometown and make that their permanent residence, so that they can still spend time with their family and then still have their relationship as these sister friends forever. And so in the book, in terms of the 4 relationship statuses, Serena is single, but doesn't want to be. She really wants to be married more than anything else, and is starting to wonder what's wrong with her. Unfortunately, she believes, there's something wrong with her as a woman. Michelle is now engaged for the very first time, but then her first love kind of, moves back onto the scene. And then Kenya is married, but is dealing with the ex-wife, her husband's ex-wife, who is the ex-wife that no one would wish on their worst enemy. And then finally, Lynette is divorced. And so now she's trying to navigate what it's like to be a single mother, and what it's like to kind of get back into the dating game all over again.
I love Lynette's character. She was ugly. And I'm like, what happened?
Yeah.
She chose something else. So, again, getting back to that. So, I mean, I see the young ladies. They're all successful, but in today's reality, many perhaps don't want to see their best friend perhaps get ahead of them, whether it's career wise, and you see it. Many people see the jealousy, but they try to still to maintain that relationship, but it's
Yes.
draining.
And it is, oh my gosh, it's very much draining. And I have had that happen to me more than once. I'm sorry to say, throughout my adult years, not with my best friends from childhood, as you were mentioning. Those are just my girls of girls of girls. I talk about Kelly and Lori a lot. Kelly and I became friends in first grade when we were 6 years old. And so last year we celebrated 50 years of friendship. And so she is my best friend. She is my sister. She's that woman who I can be who I am, no matter what that means and what that represents, the good, the bad, the ugly. We're going to share that with each other. We're going to confide that to each other. We're going to have each other's back. She's going to send me links to things that she thinks will take me even higher in my career. Just in the middle of a day, she'll do that. Or, if she tells me, she's kind of thinking about something, I get more excited than she gets about it, because I can already see the vision, and how great she's going to be at something. And so that has made the difference for us. And then she introduced me to my other best friend, Lori. And so we've now been best friends for now this year, 36 years. And so I think when you read about Serena and Michelle and Kenya and Lynette, it stems from what my relationship has been like with the two of them. And then I have other sister friends. I have three women who are writers, and I say that because that's how I met them. Had I not become a writer, had they not become a writer, we likely never would have met. But Trisha Thomas and Trice Hickman and Marissa Monte, they are just my sisters of sisters as well, and I can confide things to them and talk to them in a way that I wouldn't necessarily be able to talk to as it relates to other writers. And so it makes a difference. I have cousins who are like sisters to me as well.
That is incredible. That is a great bond to have.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I didn't meet one of my close friends. I can really just take my hat off. We're taking hats off, wigs off, just sitting down and just relaxing.
Yes.
And she is like, I think 7 years younger than I am, but we are just the closest friends. So
Yeah.
we're pushing each other higher and off the edge and
Yes.
jump, get your wings and fly like an eagle. Let's do this.
Yes. You want the best for each other.
And my sister, she acts like a mom, so she doesn't even fit in that category right
Yeah,
now.
so that's it. And see, and I think too, because I've had folks ask me, about especially my cousin Patricia. Well, she has two brothers, and then I have two brothers. So she and I spent the night with each other every other weekend. It was my house this weekend. It was her house the next weekend. We did that all the way until she left for college. She's 3 years older than me. And so I think we were really close because we had two brothers. We love our brothers. We have great relationships with our brothers. And then her brothers are like brothers to me. My brothers are like brothers to her. But I think that was what we had in common, was that, okay, we're the only girls. Kelly is an only child. So she doesn't have any sisters. She has close cousins. And so I think that's how we really connected. Lori, on the other hand, has brothers and sisters, but we still just, have been able to maintain that sisterly relationship. And I'm close with her family as well.
That's amazing. That is amazing. So I know we're probably running out of time, but I do want to ask you, like I said, what's next? I mean, do you
Yeah.
see some of your books on the big screen? Have you ever been approached?
Yep, I do. I've been approached a lot, over these last few years. And in some cases, even with one major motion picture studio and one TV network, and I passed on both of them. And so when I say that, a lot of people are like, whoa, what does that even mean? And how could you even think about doing something? And I have to say, those were two of the hardest decisions that I've ever had to make. And, you write for all these years and you love what you do. And that's what you're working so hard for. And, but what I discovered was that, it really needs to be in the hands of someone who, first of all, has the same passion for the storyline, so that, yes, we know they're going to have to make changes in order to either make a 2-hour movie or to do this weekly series, if they choose to do it that way, especially with my Reverend Curtis Black series. But I don't want it to veer off so far that my readers who have read my books and supported me all these years, that they won't even recognize the characters or the storylines. And so I'm just, hoping and praying that I can find somebody who feels the same way about that. And so, we'll just see. And, but as far as what's next book wise, it will either be a nonfiction book or it'll be another novel. Of course, I'm still getting the questions, will you write at least one more Reverend Curtis Black
We need
title?
another series.
I'm still getting that. And that final book, Better Late Than Never, came out in 2018. So we're talking the summer, that'll be 5 years ago. So no, but that really was the final book in the series. I feel like I brought Curtis full circle. That's what I always wanted to do, was to show that even the worst of people can change for the better and turn their lives around for the better, and they can begin treating people the way they want to be treated. And so I wouldn't want to take him back from that. And so we'll see. But yeah, the next book, if it's a novel, it will be a standalone title, but it also might be another nonfiction book as well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining. Is there anything else you would like to share? Any golden nuggets, traditionally published versus self-published? You've never been self-published, right?
Yes, I have. And so I'm
Yeah.
going to be talking about that a lot more, because I've been getting a lot of email messages. I did before the pandemic, but I really noticed that it really picked up during the pandemic, from, so many writers just saying, do you have services where you mentor, do you do workshops, where you can give tips and advice? And I just haven't had as much time to do that, but I'm now starting to make more time for it, and setting up appointments like that. But I literally was rejected by every single literary agent I submitted that first manuscript to, back in 1995. And so I was discouraged to the point where I was really ready to give up, because I had done everything I thought I could do. And then I eventually started submitting it to some of the editors at publishing houses. They really want you to have an agent, the traditional publishers. But I thought, well, I can't find an agent, so I'm just going to take a chance. But once again, I was rejected by every single editor that I submitted to. And so then my mom just kept saying, I don't know anything about publishing, but I do know we've passed around copies of your manuscript, and so many women are saying they couldn't put it down until they finish it. And she said, I just think that means something, and you shouldn't give up. And, I heard my mom, I tell the story all the time, but she was always telling me and had me believing I could do anything. So I thought, well, if the book is awful, is she really going to tell me that? Probably not. So it's like, yeah, mom, thank you. I love you. And, I love that you have that confidence in me. But, I was really ready to move on. I just thought this isn't going to happen. And then finally, my husband said, you have this background in business. Why can't you just start your own company and publish the book yourself? And so that's what I ended up doing. And so I self-published behind closed doors, but I did use that marketing background, and I ended up contacting, at that time, there were probably 300 plus Black bookstores, independently owned throughout the country. I contacted them, introduced myself, asked them if they would read a copy of my book. If they enjoyed it, would they order copies? Would they sell it to their customers? And so that's exactly what they ended up doing. And next thing I knew, the copies at the first printing was 3,000 copies, received that in September. We had an opening reception here in October. About 500 people came out to the event. I tell people all the time, God is really awesome how he'll set things up for you, because it did not hurt that I worked for the city of Rockford and that I saw the mayor on a regular basis. And one of our assemblymen used to be the legal director that would review my housing contracts, when I was doing those with first-time home buyers. And so that really helped get the word out. And so people showed up. I ended up coming home that night, my husband and I, and so he said, well, you do know when you go back to work on Tuesday, because we had taken a vacation day on Monday. The party was on Sunday night. We knew we were going to be exhausted. But he said, when you go back to work on Tuesday, you do know you're going to have to give your 2-week notice. And I thought, oh, the man is completely out of his mind. He's lost it. It's one thing, to push me to start the business. We invested all this money, didn't know how it was going to turn out. But now you're telling me we're going to go from 2 incomes to 1. And so I just couldn't wrap my mind around that. But I thought about it. I prayed about it. I talked to my mom and my close friends. And so I did go back to work on that Tuesday. That was in October. It was the end of October, 1996. And so as of November, 2 weeks later, I left, and I've been writing full time ever since then. Yeah. So I know both worlds. There are advantages and disadvantages to self-publishing, and there are also advantages and disadvantages to being traditionally published as well.
But traditionally published, you just have the option of saying no, right?
Yes, and you do. But the thing is if you are able to find a literary agent and they are able to sell your work to a traditional publisher, instead of you paying for your content editor, your copy editor, your proofreader, your book cover designer, your typesetter, all of the above, all of the expenses that go into self-publishing a book the right way. That's what I like to share. We can all self-publish a book, but to self-publish it the right way, you're going to have to spend a little bit of money to do that. When your book is acquired by a traditional publisher, they're going to pay you money up front before you even finish writing the book, or, before it's actually published. And then you're going to earn royalty. So of course, you're not going to earn as much as if you're selling the book yourself as a self-published writer, but then you don't have all the expenses. You're not printing the book. If you go out and they send you on a book tour, you're not going to pay for those expenses, as far as travel and the hotel and, your meals. They're going to do some of the advertising and the marketing. So you still have to do as much on your own in terms of promoting your book, but you have a different level of distribution. So you're going to probably see your book in Barnes and Noble and Walmart and Target much quicker than if you were doing it from a self-published perspective.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you. Sabrina, you have any more questions to ask one of our favorite authors?
No, but I do want to say a thank you for not giving up, because your work was actually needed. I learned your books. I admire you to the highest. I mean, you are the bomb.com.
Oh my gosh. Thank
If
you
they ever
so
say
much for
that.
that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I just really appreciate you for not giving up, and I love your story, and keep on telling your story.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
But you have really changed lives. You have.
Wow. That's a blessing to hear, because my hope and prayer, every time I write every book, and I'd be praying before my writing session would start for the day, and my prayer was that, Lord, let it help at least one person, and hopefully many, but if it can help at least one person, if it can inspire at least one person, then you feel like it was all worth your while. And so that has always been my prayer with every single book that I write, that someone will be helped, or they'll find something that they can relate to, or they'll be able to read something and realize, wow, I'm not, in this all alone. This character went through exactly what I'm going through. And then you get to see how they got on the other side of it.
One more question. Do you put some of your personal stories in there about your friends? Do you?
So yeah, that has happened from time to time. I get that question. And so of course, when I'm writing really positive aspects of some of my friends, I think they may see that. But sometimes if I've written something that might be a little in the other direction, maybe some not so nice personalities, most people never see themselves. And so because I've never had anyone say, oh, was this really, about me? I had one friend who said, wow, this was too much like me. And it really wasn't. It was just that it was the type of thing that happens to women across the board, nationwide, worldwide. But yeah, for the most part, I don't think people see themselves.
So when I first wrote, wrote my first novel, my friend was like, Trina, I know you wrote about me. I was like, I'm thinking I wrote about everyone who I think experienced this, but not particularly her. She is so
Yes.
hilarious.
That's so funny. So how many books have you written?
I've only written one novel because,
Mhm.
I was working for corporate America too, and I just left the classroom as an English teacher. So I just left my profession in May.
Okay.
In May. So now I'm working part time, but I have so many other things that I want to do. Besides a writer, I'm also a playwright. And I
Oh,
also want to open a nonprofit. And I'm also working on my PhD. So I have a lot of things on my plate now.
yeah, you do.
So I am going to, once I get this PhD out the way, and then I'll focus on what's next. I just
Yeah,
really
that
have
has to
to
be your
pray.
priority. That's what you have that as your priority, so you can get that finished, and then you can move on to the next thing.
It is a series though, so a lot of my friends like Trina, when is the next one coming out? And we really need to see some romance in the second
Yeah.
novel, which is
Yes.
so funny. I'll say, you want to see some romance? So the first novel is Olivia's journey. So the second novel is her detour. So I may put a little spice in that,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
we'll see.
So yes. Well, congratulations on your first book. I mean, that it's huge when you finally write and publish that first book, because it's a little, a little bit more the next time around than you knew the first time. So, it doesn't always, I won't say it becomes easier, because you are still hoping that you can do as good of a job or better than you did with the last book that you wrote, but it's still, to me, it becomes easier in terms of the process because you know what to expect when you're writing the next book. So
Well, thank you so, again. Thank you so very much, and we really appreciate you for just really just having a conversation with us.
thank you so much. Thank you to both of you. I enjoyed the conversation and hope to connect with you again soon.
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Take care
All
now.
right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.